I'm Paul Arthur. This is Bridge City News. Here are some of the top stories we've been following. Alberta NDP leader Naheed Nenshi is demanding an investigation into allegations of UCP government corruption. Plus, Prime Minister Trudeau hosts a tariff summit with hundreds of representatives from business, industry, and labor groups. And with Super Bowl 59 quickly approaching, along with it are the Super Bowl ads. We'll hear from some of the stars.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News.
Thanks for joining us. Alberta NDP leader Naheed Nenshi is demanding an RCMP investigation into allegations of corruption related to the provincial health contracts. A Globe and Mail report suggests that former Alberta Health Services CEO Athana Mentsolopoulos was fired for digging into how certain companies were getting government contracts. A letter from her lawyer alleges that she was pressured by UCP government officials to sign off on new deals for chartered surgical facilities.
Danielle Smith's government fired the AHS CEO and then fired the board. She's now on her fifth AHS CEO in the short time she's been premier. She's fired the board twice. We already knew that they didn't know how to manage healthcare. But what this report alleges goes much, much further. The report alleges that this firing happened after the CEO and the board of AHS started to look into the legality around contracts for private surgeries that could enrich companies that had very, very strong ties to the UCP government and staff. They did all of this with your tax dollars. The allegations say that the CEO was pressured into signing contracts way above market value with these companies. The board was so concerned about this that they suggested that the CEO take the information to the RCMP for criminal investigation. The CEO was fired 2 days before a meeting with the Auditor General to talk about what was going on. So this is what I'm calling for today. The leader of His Majesty's Loyal Opposition, Christina Gray, will be writing to ask for 3 investigations by the RCMP, by the Auditor General, and by the Ethics Commissioner. And I am calling for a judicial-led public inquiry into this matter.
AHS says it is currently conducting a review of their procurement procedures related to the allegations and will not be awarding any contracts involving the parties that are involved in that review. Health Minister Adriana LaGrange's office has stated that the allegations are false and that the personnel changes were part of the province's planned transition to the newly formed Acute Care Alberta Agency. Auditor General Doug Wiley has confirmed that he has started an investigation into the allegations. LaGrange says the province welcomes the review and will fully cooperate. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has welcomed hundreds of people representing businesses, industry groups and labour at a summit about bolstering the economy in the face of Canada's rapidly changing relationship with the United States amid a tariff threat. In his opening remarks, Trudeau says, quote, "It's about time we have a genuine free trade in Canada," noting that trade with the U.S. and the rest of the world is also essential.
How do we make sure we are resilient as an economy? And for me, there's 3 areas we need to think about: Canada, the United States, and international. First of all, on Canada, it's about time we had genuine free trade within Canada that'll make us more efficient, more competitive, and give greater opportunities for Canadians, and not just individual Canadians, but businesses and suppliers to do business across Canada, east-west, and not just north-south. Secondly, trade with the U.S. Geography means we're always going to both benefit and be challenged by trade with the United States. It's always going to be a big chunk of our economy. Can we be thoughtful and deliberate about the kinds of partnerships that enhance and create true win-wins, but also give us a little more protection against political rhetoric in the United States? We have a free trade deal with Europe that has seen opportunities grow significantly over the past years, but can we do even more?
After reporters were ushered out of the meeting room, the Prime Minister made a very interesting comment behind closed doors, stating, "Donald Trump is not joking when he says he'd like to make Canada the 51st state." He also warned that the U.S. is after Canada's critical minerals. The Toronto Star was able to hear what Trudeau was saying because the audio was inadvertently broadcast. 3 cabinet ministers who were at the summit did not deny that Trudeau made those comments. Amid the uncertainty of the future of Canadian energy exports, there have been increasing calls for Canada to reach beyond its current standards for exports as well as interprovincial trade. Gwyn Morgan, founder of Encana Corporation, once one of the largest energy companies in Canada, says it's important to keep up with the current trade rate with our U.S. partners and still aim to go further.
We do sell a lot of our oil to the United States, about 4 million barrels a day. We're by far the largest supplier. I don't know why he's going to talk about putting a tax on it, because all it's going to mean is his consumers are going to pay a higher price because they still have to have the oil. A lot of the refineries in the southern U.S. can only take Canadian oil. The biggest single thing that should have happened a long time ago was a pipeline to the east. You know, here we have one of the largest amounts of oil in the world, and the Eastern Canada is bringing in foreign oil from some of our friends like Algeria. That was an excellent project, and it made lots of sense, and it meant that all those ships coming in down the St. Lawrence Seaway from foreign ports wouldn't have to do that anymore. Maybe the energy piece of East Pipeline could be picked up again.
After talks last week with U.S. President Trump, Trudeau has agreed to appoint a fentanyl czar. Public Safety Minister David McGuinty says the scope of the fentanyl czar will be finalized by the end of this week, and that the position would absolutely be appointed before the March 4th tariff deadline.
The fentanyl czar's role will be to help us integrate what is a whole of society challenge. Right? Fentanyl is a foreign affairs issue. It's a law enforcement issue. It's an intelligence issue. It's a public health issue. It's a tracing issue. And the fentanyl crisis is particularly egregious because fentanyl is so lethal. It's lethal in Canada and it's lethal in the United States. And I made sure to remind White House officials that in some cases, some weeks, some days, on per capita population, we're losing more Canadians than Americans are losing Americans. That's an important stat for the Americans to understand. We are connected with this crisis.
Can Canada commit to appointing a fentanyl czar by the time this 30-day delay is up? Absolutely.
Japan's Prime Minister met with U.S. President Donald Trump today, and Shigeru Ishiba didn't skimp on the legwork as he prepared for his first meeting with Trump. This week he met with the CEOs of SoftBank and OpenAI, both people Trump recently hosted at the White House. Before heading to Washington, Ishiba told reporters for his first face-to-face talks with the U.S. president he would like to focus on building a personal relationship of trust between the two. The International Criminal Court is calling on its member states to stand up against sanctions imposed by the U.S. The White House issued the executive order yesterday in response to what it called, quote, illegitimate and baseless actions targeting America and our close ally Israel. The court called the move an attempt to harm its independent and impartial judicial work. Trump's order sanctioned the ICC over its investigations of Israel and the arrest warrants it issued for top Israeli leaders for alleged war crimes. Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu continues his visit in Washington, D.C., meeting today with U.S. House Speaker Mike Johnson.
President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu both understand that peace is secured through strength, not appeasement, and not by turning our backs on our allies. Before he even took office in January, President Trump and his team helped secure the ceasefire agreement and the return of American and Israeli hostages. This week, he announced a plan to exert maximum pressure on Iran and its proxies who terrorize the Israeli people and the world. This is what decisive leadership looks like. And with President Trump back in the White House and Republican control of Congress, America will not turn its back on our national security priorities. Our support for Israel remains ironclad.
The American-Israeli alliance has never been stronger. I'm now completing the week in which began with an extraordinary meeting with President Trump. And under his leadership, the critical decisions that show his commitment and the American people's commitment to Israel have come to the fore instantly. First, he renewed immediately the supply of weapons that had been stopped, which we need as we're fighting for our future, for our existence, and for the broader Middle East in a seven-front war. He immediately released those weapons. He issued yesterday these sanctions on this scandalous and corrupt organization, the ICC, that threatens the right of all democracies to defend themselves by themselves. And he's done so many things in the interim, just in 2 weeks. But I was deeply moved by the reception that we got, the substantive things that we discussed, making sure that Iran never gets a nuclear weapon, and also making sure that Hamas is destroyed. We're not going to have a future for Gaza or for future for peace in our part of the world if Hamas remains there. And we agreed on many things, but I think it sets the tone for this great strengthening of the American-Israeli alliance.
In local news, the man convicted of possessing over $1 million in drugs 2 years ago has been sentenced this week. Patrick Rodney was arrested in December of 2022 following a joint Lethbridge police and alert investigation, which included a search into his home. Officers seized 5.2 kilograms of methamphetamine, 3.2 kilograms of cocaine, and 1.6 kilograms of fentanyl powder. 4 firearms and $79,000 in cash was also seized. The total value of the confiscated items is estimated at nearly $1 million, the second largest drug bust ever in our city. 36-year-old Patrick Rodney was convicted of 5 charges related to drug trafficking and possession of a loaded firearm. On Wednesday, he was sentenced to 12 years in prison. Lethbridge Fire and Emergency Services responded to 2 separate fires in South Lethbridge early this morning. Crews were first dispatched shortly after 3 a.m. to a shed fire in the 300 block of 23rd Street South. The fire spread to a fence and a small utility trailer before firefighters quickly contained it. Just after 4 a.m., LFES responded to a garage fire in the 600 block of 15th Street South. The fire had spread to an adjacent fence before fire crews brought it under control. No injuries were reported in either incident. Both fires are under investigation. 2 curling teams from the Lethbridge Collegiate Institute have won dual gold medals at the South Zone Tournament in Lethbridge this week. Each team will be gearing up for Alberta Schools Athletic Association Provincial Tournament later this month. BCN's Landon Hickok has more on that story.
It's a feat that not many schools get to witness very often.
Anytime you can get a team that advances past zones and to get provincials is a pretty impressive feat. To have 2 teams this year that both passed that bar and are heading to provincials is pretty fun.
Both the mixed and girls curling teams at the Lethbridge Collegiate Institute secured gold medals at the ASAA South Zone Tournament held at the Lethbridge Curling Club earlier this week.
It's a testament to the strength and the will of these kids and their grit and determination to stick with it, and even if they get down, to find a way to battle back.
Members of the girls team say they are confident moving forward after winning every game in the tournament.
We're feeling really good. It's really quite thrilling.
Yeah, our last game we played, we secured the win pretty easily. We shook at our 5th end, so it felt good.
Definitely just going in there confident but not too confident, keeping our energy up, just playing how we usually do in a normal setting and just taking it game by game.
The mixed team, on the other hand, says it went all the way down to the wire.
I think it was a great win. It was a really hard game. It came down to the last shot by our skip, and, a lot of sweeping and a lot of shouting had to be involved, a lot of team spirit in the moment to, secure our win. We were down 1, then we ended up winning by 2. It was great. I think we're really excited for provincials. We're going to be back on the ice any day now. We're going to be, practicing hard, training hard to be the best team we can be.
My voice was gone right after. It was good, though. This is my 3rd year doing it, and it's finally made provincials.
It was intense. It was fun. We worked as a team, and we came out on top. That's all there is to it.
The LCI curling teams will head up to Brooks for 3 days beginning on February 27th for the Alberta Schools Athletic Association Curling Provincial Tournament.
Well, we're just going to keep doing what we have been doing and focusing on where we can possibly find some improvements in the game and to tweak our game a little bit to make it stronger. The level of competition just keeps ramping up from cities to zones to provincials. So we'll just see if we can find that next level and hopefully come back with some hardware after provincials.
For Bridge City News, I'm Landon Hickok.
Well, it almost felt tropical today, didn't it? With the temperature getting up to around -12. Well, we aren't quite done with the cold weather just yet. Weather details on the way after the break. Let's take a look at our forecast. A few clouds tonight with an overnight low of -18 and a wind chill of -22. There is a risk of frostbite along with that. Saturday, mainly cloudy with some northwesterly winds gusting up to 40 in the morning, then light near noon with a high of -8. For Sunday, a mix of sun and cloud with a 30% chance of flurries, a high of -14, and then we drop down to the deep freeze again with a low of -26. Sunshine on Monday with a high of -18 and then cool again overnight down to -24. Tuesday, we'll see a bit of warming, sunny with a high of -10. Wednesday, a mix of sun and cloud, a high of -13. On Thursday, still pretty cool, cloudy with a high of only -18. Checking the almanac, the average high for this time of year is +1 with an average low of -11. The record high was 19 degrees set back in 1954, and the record low was a very cold -36 back in 1936. The sun rose at 7:55 and will set at 5:37. Well, let's see how Saturday is shaping up across Canada now. More wet conditions for the west coast, flurries or rain showers and 3 degrees in Victoria, and a few flurries and +3 in Vancouver. Moving to the prairies, cloudy and -10 for Calgary, a 30% chance of flurries in Edmonton and -12. Regina continues to be cold with -20 under sunny skies, much the same in Saskatoon with a high of -19. In Winnipeg, partly cloudy and -18. Moving to Ontario, Toronto is expecting some snow and -2. Same story in Ottawa, some sunshine with a high of -4. Partly cloudy and -5 for Montreal. In Atlantic Canada, expect a mix of sun and cloud and a high of -5. Partly cloudy and -2 for Halifax, and a 40% chance of flurries in St. John's with a high of -2. In Charlottetown, a mix of sun and cloud with a high of -4 for Saturday. Canada's unemployment rate fell to 6.6% in January. Statistics Canada says the country's labor market added 76,000 jobs for the month, beating economists' expectations. It's the second straight month the jobless rate has fallen after hitting 6.9% in November. The manufacturing sector saw the most jobs added at 33,000, with a third of them coming from Ontario. For our area in Lethbridge, the unemployment rate decreased from 5.7% in December 2024 to 5.2% in January 2025. Some 1,700 people found work in our city over the last month, while 300 workers left the Lethbridge labor pool. The federal government is restricting the DeepSeek chatbot from some government phones. A memo from the Treasury Board Secretariat's Chief Information Officer says the move is due to serious privacy concerns over the Chinese artificial intelligence company's inappropriate collection and retention of sensitive personal information. Dominic Rochon is suggesting other departments and agencies do the same as a precautionary measure to protect government networks and data. DeepSeek released its chatbot last month, generating buzz in the process because it's more affordable and uses less energy than products from rival companies. Rogers is pushing back against the Competition Bureau's deceptive marketing allegations. The Bureau says Rogers ads create the impression their plans provide consumers with limitless data, but data speeds are severely slowed after reaching a cap. The Bureau wants the Competition Tribunal to penalize Rogers as well as force the company to stop the advertising and compensate customers. Rogers says the Bureau is unreasonably targeting the company for an advertising format all other major telecom providers have also used. Now, here's a look at today's markets.
The TSX was down 91 points on the day to finish at 25,442. The Dow was down 444 points to 44,303. The S&P 500 was down 57 points to 60.25, and the Nasdaq was down 268 points to finish at 19,523. West Texas Intermediate oil was up 47 cents to 71.08 US per barrel. Natural gas was down 10 cents to 3.31 US. Gold was up 66 cents to 28.58 US an ounce, and silver was down 43 cents to 31.79 US an ounce. Feed wheat is at $8.57 per bushel, barley is at $6.58, canola is at $14.88, and corn is at $8.53 per bushel. Live cattle were down 15 cents to $200.78. Feeder cattle March contract was down 40 cents to $264.90. Lean hogs were up 60 cents to $87.25. And the Canadian dollar was up slightly over the past 24 hours to 70 cents US.
Recapping one of our top stories, Alberta NDP leader Naheed Nenshi is demanding an RCMP investigation into allegations of corruption related to provincial health contracts. Health Minister Adriana LaGrange has denied the allegations and says the Alberta government welcomes the Auditor General's investigation and will fully cooperate with the review. Well, everyone has their favorite cure-all that they swear by when fighting viruses. Dr. Clayton Cogano, a naturopathic doctor and owner of Well Vitality Health Clinic in Lethbridge, shares about one common ingredient that is probably in your kitchen that's a great natural cure to fight common illnesses. That's coming up right after the break. When you see news happening in your community, be sure to send us an email at info@bridgecitynews.ca. You can also visit our website anytime to check out more of our stories and interviews.
Well, what a crazy year it's been for colds, flus, and COVID, and you name it. But there is a way to build your immunity to protect yourself and your family from getting run down by sickness. Our guest today is Dr. Clayton Cogano, who is a naturopathic doctor in Lethbridge and the owner of Well Vitality Health Clinic. He's also trained in conventional medicine with a Bachelor of Science in Exercise Science Kinesiology and did 3 years of research on radiation and cancer at the University of Lethbridge. It's great to see you again, Dr. Cogano.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Okay. So it seems almost everyone you talk to these days in Southern Alberta has had more than their fair share of colds and flu this season, myself included in there, unfortunately. So naturally, people are looking for ways to build up their immune system to stay healthy, right? So how has it been for you at your clinic? Have you seen an increase in people struggling with health issues? What have you seen?
Well, I wouldn't say I see an increase. It definitely always increases around this time of year. It's pretty normal, maybe a little bit more influenza, a little bit more respiratory issues than the past few years. But I also feel like our bodies are just kind of building our immune system back up from kind of being away from everything the last couple years. So it does take a little bit of time to sort of reactivate things and get your immune system used to these things again. And so it's kind of to be expected.
Okay, yeah, interesting. It's interesting that, how we were almost like on a pause there for a while. And now we're getting back into it, and here we are. So, there's a lot of talk that vitamin D is a good immunity builder. I mean, I've always heard about vitamin C, but tell us a bit about vitamin D.
So vitamin D is quite it has many complex functions in the body. One of them is the immune system. And so its primary thing there is that it's activating cells in your body, immune cells in your body, called T cells. And they're the cells that will recognize a virus or a bacteria. So when something comes into your body, it's those T cells that say, hey, there's something wrong. That sounds the alarm system. And it also activates another cell called a macrophage. And this cell particularly is a type of cell that will go and gobble up the virus or the bacteria and eat it and get rid of it in your body. So that's primarily its kind of role in the immune system, is it's upregulating those immune cells. I mean, it also has a direct antimicrobial effect, so it decreases the ability for these things to replicate, et cetera, and it's an anti-inflammatory. So vitamin D is really, it's a very popular one. It's quite safe, when taken roughly within, the recommended dose. But what a lot of people don't realize is that it also plays a significant role in calcium absorption. So you don't want to take too much of it because it can actually create a situation where you can have too much calcium going into your body. And it also breaks bone apart to allow formation of stronger bones in a roundabout way. And so it has many roles in the immune system, but it's also something that you don't want to just take copious amounts of because it has multiple other functions in the body as well.
Oh, that's so interesting. I mean, I've usually attributed it to like a sunshine. Like if you don't get enough sunshine, vitamin D is a perfect one to take for that. But it's interesting to know that it does so many other things as well.
Yeah, and yeah, most people in Canada are quite deficient in it, and we can test vitamin D. I think it's important to test vitamin D and kind of monitor it to make sure that you aren't taking too much as well. A lot of people are just told a lot of times that, well, you're probably deficient because you're in Canada, and it's true, most of us are. But once you start taking it, then you also want to make sure you're not taking too much of it.
Yeah, definitely. So I guess it's true then that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
I know, yeah. For the most part, absolutely. Like there's a lot of things we can do to prevent. Sometimes you just get unlucky, I think, but I do think that there's a lot of things that you can do to help boost your immune system to prevent getting ill in the first place. Absolutely, there is.
Okay. Well, with that said, what are some other supplements that are known to help build immunity?
I mean, there's the ones that a lot of people have heard about, like echinacea, for example, and vitamin C. Those things are great at boosting immune system. Some others that maybe people haven't heard of that are more directly antiviral in nature would be like N-acetylcysteine. Quercetin is another one that actually doubles up as a great natural antihistamine for allergies as well. And then there's also another one that's fantastic is astragalus. It improves your white blood cell count. So it increases your defense, so to speak, against the viruses or bacteria that are in your body. There's so many that you can, try or list off. You don't want to get overwhelmed with taking too many things either.
Yeah, definitely. It can get a little bit, a little bit much sometimes.
A little overwhelming.
Exactly. And then, of course, we've got some colds that are caused by bacteria, and then others are caused by a virus. So I understand that maybe there's some herbs that are antiviral in nature. So
yes.
Can you maybe explain how those work?
Yeah, so like certain herbs, like for example, like garlic. It's the active component of the garlic. It's called allicin, and that just specifically will inhibit replication of a virus and even deactivate enzymes which allow it to work properly. So there's quite a bit of research on different supplements that can not only stop a virus, but also slow things down so then your immune system can actually catch up and defeat the virus.
Wow, no, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So how much of a role does stress or anxiety play when it comes to immunity?
It's probably one of the biggest things that I see in my practice is chronic stress and anxiety, which very much go hand in hand a lot of times, specifically to certain hormones that get depleted with these things, cortisol being one of the main ones. And this hormone in your body lowers in response to chronic stress. And initially, your body will be able to handle that. But when your body doesn't have these specific hormones, then you're much more susceptible to getting viruses or bacterial infections, specifically when the cortisol drops. Initially, when your stress is high, your cortisol rises, it goes up. And that actually can improve your immune system, improve your defense against viruses. So chronic stress, chronic depletion of this hormone cortisol will lead to a lowering of your immune system and an inability to handle or deal with stress, which can lead to anxiety.
Oh, terrible.
And so supporting that system is a massively essential thing at helping to prevent viruses and boosting your immune system.
Yeah, so how can we support that then? What are some things that we can do to reduce that stress?
Well, it's difficult. Everybody's different. There's the obvious sort of answer is like, well, do things like exercise and yoga and meditation, etc. I try and tell my patients just to try and look at what's on their plate and take something off their plate if they can, because a lot of times it's life gets very busy and it's very difficult to just say, oh, go do this or go do that. Like you're putting something more on by doing that. So some people can do that and other people they can't. And so I think for people to kind of learn that like it's okay to review what you have on your plate and say no and be able to take things off your plate is a fantastic way to reduce your stress, manage the anxiety as well as doing things that help like exercise and yoga, meditation, etc. Those things.
Right, definitely. What about a proper rest? I've heard that could make a huge difference as well.
It goes hand in hand with stress. Stress, and rest. If you're resting more, sleep, for example, is a massive one that plays such an important role because it's such a massive stressor on your cortisol system that if you're not taking things off your plate, if you're not decreasing how much load you have on your body, then it's going to be very difficult to maintain a healthy immune system.
Yeah, unfortunately, sometimes when we're so stressed and anxiety ridden, it is hard to get proper rest. It's hard to sleep.
They're directly related. You actually need energy and energy systems to fall asleep. So it's for a lot of people, when they have insomnia or difficulty sleeping, they also have massive issues with their cortisol and their hormones and their energy and their immune system. And the only way to truly fix the sleep is by helping their energy systems, helping their immune system. And there are things directly, that can help benefit sleep, but you almost have to treat it from a dualistic manner. You have to treat both their energy systems to give them more energy in order to then fall asleep.
Yeah, I know. It's a complicated system. Do you recommend melatonin? I've heard some people say don't get dependent on it.
Yeah, so melatonin, I find that melatonin, most patients that come into me have already tried melatonin because it's more well known, and so melatonin is just a hormone, secreted at sleep by a gland in your brain called the pineal gland. And this is something that is more important for the circadian rhythm. So it's more important if you have like jet lag. And in those cases, it works amazingly well for most people. But what I find is that when people come in and they've, most people, even if they haven't tried it, it's rarely the one that's really indicated, I find. There's a lot of other sleep support supplements that we can try and even combine together that will help people with sleep more than melatonin.
Okay. Yeah. Talk to your physician, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a pretty complex system. And unfortunately, it's one that we can't test.
That's too bad. Thinking of maybe what we're putting into our bodies here, are there certain types of foods that can help build our immune system? We've always heard that there is. And on the flip side, what would be the foods that would weaken immune system?
So the ones, yes, absolutely. There's, foods that are going to support the immune system, anything with lots of color, fruits and vegetables with lots of color, berries full of antioxidants. They take pressure off of your system, off your body. Citrus fruits tend to be quite high in vitamin C, which boosts your immune system. So like oranges and kiwis, etc., things like that. And then there's foods that produce a lot of stress on the body. So like, for example, alcohol, it puts a ton of stress on the liver. It decreases your ability to process and assimilate nutrients. Foods that are high in sugar are very inflammatory, so they put a lot of pressure on your body that way. Foods that are high in saturated or trans fats are also very difficult for your body to process, and they create a lot of oxidation. And so what your goal is with food is to take pressure off of your system, not to put more pressure on your system. And again, it comes down to stress. Stress isn't always, mental, emotional. Sometimes it can be physical as well. And in the case of food, that's exactly what it is. So, from my practice, I tend to also look at a lot of digestive tract stuff, gut health stuff, because what your goal is to try and take as much load off the body, as much stress off of the body in general, because it will all help.
So many things to think about when we're putting our bodies under stress here. There's so many factors that go into it. Now, I know that your clinic offers something fairly unique, this IV therapy to boost immunity. Can you maybe quickly explain how this works?
Sure. So there's different, so intravenous therapies. There's different ones that you can do. I would say the most common for boosting the immune system would be like an IV nutrient bag. So that would have like a higher dose vitamin C that you could take orally, and then B vitamins, magnesium, calcium, basically a multivitamin in there. Now, the benefit of the IV, because all these IVs, and people will tell you like, well, they're water soluble, you'll just pee them out. And that's very true. They are water soluble, and absolutely you do that. But it's actually the difference between taking a supplement by mouth orally is that when you take it by mouth, it has to go through your digestive tract, which most people that I see have horrible digestive systems that we have to work on. So you lose absorbability there. So you're not absorbing everything. And then it goes into your bloodstream to your liver first. And then your liver will actually remove a lot of the vitamin that you took orally before it goes to all the cells of your body.
Fascinating.
So by the time you take a supplement orally, you're reducing your dosage, you're reducing the amount. Or in the case of, for example, vitamin C, you're unable to take a massive dose because you'll get irritable bowel from taking a high dose of vitamin C. So intravenous therapy is beneficial because it bypasses both of those systems. When you IV someone high dose vitamin C, it doesn't go through the digestive tract. We can give you a much higher dose, and you absorb 100% of everything we give you. So every single cell of your body gets all of the vitamins and all of the minerals that you wouldn't have got just by taking an oral supplement. So what it does is it ramps up all those metabolic and cellular processes. And then your body says, okay, now we'll get rid of the rest. So it is true that you do eventually get rid of it, but it's how it's working in your body that's so massively stronger than just taking an oral supplement. So it is very beneficial.
That is really fascinating. I bet people just come out of there feeling like $1 million.
It's one of the best things we can do for our immune system and energy systems. Yeah.
So interesting. It's been so interesting as always talking to you, but we are out of time. So I thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks again for having me.
Absolutely. Dr. Clayton Cogonut is a naturopathic doctor in Lethbridge with Well Vitality Health Clinic. Well, Lethbridge and Southern Alberta have a fascinating, rich history to look back upon, and we perhaps don't take enough time to reflect upon it, but today's guest is going to help us do just that. Lorian Johansson is the Vice President of the Lethbridge Historical Society. Welcome to Bridge City News, Lorian. Great to have you on today.
Thank you so much for the invitation. I always love to talk about Lethbridge's history.
Awesome. Okay, well, with that said, maybe give our viewers a brief snapshot of what your organization is all about. It's not just Lethbridge history, right? But Southern Alberta, all of Southern Alberta?
That's correct.
Okay.
So the Lethbridge Historical Society is a chapter of the Historical Society of Alberta. Our chapter covers the Southern Alberta region, sort of from just south of Calgary down to the border. So it does encompass quite a lot of Southern Alberta, including all of the small towns. They are free to access our resources, and we do a lot of work with them as well. We do tend to focus on Lethbridge because that's where we're based, but we do also cover a lot of other things in the region.
Okay, great. Well, maybe give us an idea of what takes place at a typical meeting or gathering of the Lethbridge Historical Society.
Well, we have several different options as far as gatherings. On the fourth Tuesday of every month during September through April, we host a general meeting for our membership where we conduct a little bit of business and then we move into a presentation format. We invite guest speakers from all different walks of life come and speak to our members and guests about things that are relevant or interesting. We've had horticulture and we've had how to plant a victory garden in your front yard or backyard. We've had it was fascinating as what kind of vegetables you can grow in southern Alberta that you can then turn around and eat to be a little bit more self-sustaining and environmentally conscious. That was a really great one. We've talked about our plaques and monuments project. Anything that really would be fascinating or interesting to our membership and to the general public. So that's one of the ways. We do also conduct tours, walking tours of the city and local area. Some of them are the Downtown History and Beer Tour, which most people are familiar with. That was initiated by the LHS here. And we do some for general public. We do some for the membership. So we have a lot of tours that take place throughout the year. We have several coming up actually over the next few months. And then the other thing is to join the executive council and sit on the board with the rest of the team. So that happens on Monday. So there's several different ways to get involved.
It sounds like it. So obviously this is something people can join in. How can people maybe join up for your group?
The easiest way is to attend one of the general meetings and sign up for your membership with one of the executive that's there. We do also have a website, lethbridgehistory.org, and memberships are available through there, as well as a contact us form. So if you have questions, you can certainly submit an email request and somebody will be able to guide you through becoming a member.
Okay, so why don't we begin with the name of the city? So I think a lot of people assume the name Lethbridge stems from the famous bridge that spans the coulees, but that isn't necessarily the case now, is it?
It's not at all the case, actually. Lethbridge was named after William Lethbridge. He was the president and largest shareholder of the Northwestern Coal and Navigation Company. You know how the NMAX Center is named after the sponsor, NMAX? Lethbridge is something similar to that. He got the city named after him because of his money that he invested into the company. He never actually visited Lethbridge at all, not even once.
Oh, wow. Well, that's disappointing. So it all comes down to money, right?
Unfortunately, that's the case.
Yeah.
It has been for a long time.
It's a little bit more of a romantic notion to think it's about the bridge, really.
Sure.
I can see why the rumor got started.
Absolutely. It makes sense, but it's completely a coincidence that it's Lethbridge and we have a bridge.
And then we become Bridge City. Yes, I know. That's so interesting. So, I mean, speaking of the bridge, that iconic high-level bridge is often referred to as the longest in the world. And there are, of course, longer bridges elsewhere, but I believe it's still the longest of its specific type in the world. Can you maybe share a little bit about the history of that bridge?
Of course, the bridge is in fact the longest for its height and style in the world. Nobody has built anything that's longer and higher of the same style trestle bridge.
And that would be like a trestle bridge, yeah.
That's right, yeah. Okay. It was announced in 1906 and completed 3 years later. It is still the largest single railway structure in Canada. It was put into place to shorten the trip to Fort Macleod. Instead of having to go down and around the river valley, the bridge was put in place so that they could just skip over the top and shave off several hours at least of their train journey. The walls on the side of the bridge, you've seen them there, they're to make sure that the trains don't get pushed off by our wind, our beautiful wind in southern Alberta.
Oh my gosh, that's scary.
It's a safety.
I didn't even think that's a possibility, but now that you said it.
Well, you know, the wind can get pretty powerful down here in southern Alberta, so they put those measures in place. The construction of the bridge is actually considered a national historic event. Over 100 men worked on the construction of the bridge. There were a few deaths during the construction. Safety measures for workers were not what they are now. There is a very famous photograph of two men leaping off the last structure to be lowered into place. They were promptly fired after that. They did not die, but they were fired for their shenanigans.
Oh my gosh. I think I have seen that picture, and they're jumping
Most
basically into
people
the
have,
river,
yeah.
right?
But they're jumping from the piece of steel off to the side of the
Yes,
bay.
where the
Yeah.
land is. Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
So it's not as high as we think at that point. But
No,
still.
no.
Still. Safety first, gentlemen. Come on, let's not give other people ideas, right?
You know, in the early 1900s, they didn't have fall safe harnesses. They didn't have
There
any
was
of
no
those
such
things.
thing as safety back then, basically.
That's right.
I
Which
get
may
it.
be one of the reasons why safety harnesses and whatnot were put into place
Yeah.
as we moved through the 19th and 20th centuries, because people did things like that. I don't know. That's just my speculation, but it makes sense.
There you go. Okay, so moving on from the bridge, we have a school named after, so we've got some other famous names here in town. So we have a school named after Nicholas Sharon and a hospital named after Sir Alexander Galt. And both were businessmen who started coal mines here. So to what degree did coal mining impact Lethbridge in the early years?
There were over 100 mines in the Lethbridge coal fields, somewhere between Picture Butte and McGrath. In 1919, we were the highest producing coal field in Canada. And it helped to determine where Lethbridge was built. It brought in industries such as Lethbridge Iron Works. Uh, it was a major employer, brought a lot of families to the area, and started other communities like Colehurst and Diamond City. Uh, it's almost impossible to quantify the importance of coal mining to our development. Uh, it it was the founding reason for Lethbridge's construction here. And then as we moved out of coal mining, that's when we moved into more of an agricultural community. But we definitely started as that industrial coal mining location. That's why the city sprang up where it did.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, of course, in addition to that, Southern Alberta has a rich Indigenous history. So the River Valley has a park named Indian Battle Park, where Fort Whoop-Up is located. So maybe share a brief history about that.
The Indian Battle Park is the name that was chosen by City Council in the 1960s. And it specifically refers to a battle in the fall of 1870 between the Blackfoot Nations and the Cree Nations. It was a winter camping area protected from the weather and that. And where the high level bridge is now was a very natural crossing point in the river. We do have a book about the Indian battle that went on there, several different editions. But the story of how these two nations fought over rights to the land and the ability to camp there, it's much more than I could cover in such a short time. But that's why it's named that, because our Indigenous peoples camped there and wintered there to stay safe from the elements.
Yeah, and then of course, speaking of Indigenous people, people from around the world travel to Alberta specifically to visit Head Smashed In Buffalo Jump. So for any viewers who have never heard about this or have ever been there, what is that all about?
Head Smashed In Buffalo Jump it's a national historic site. It's a provincial heritage site and a World Heritage Site, all of which were designated through the 60s, late 60s into the early 80s. It's a place where the Indigenous peoples would drive the buffalo off the cliff in order to harvest them. It is definitely a fascinating interpretive center there. If you haven't been, I definitely recommend it. It's a very eye-opening look into how Indigenous people manage to hunt in such large capacities. And there are guides and books available online that give you a lot of the details of the history of the location. But where it's one of our national heritage sites that we're very proud to be quite close to Lethbridge.
Yeah, I believe it's a UNESCO heritage site, isn't it? Yeah,
Yes.
that's amazing. Okay, now, Lorian, you mentioned agriculture earlier, and of course that is a big part of southern Alberta, especially the sugar beet industry. So I believe that that also brought quite a few Japanese immigrants to our area. So maybe can you tell us a bit about that?
The sugar beet industry has been operating in Lethbridge to this day since the early 1900s. You are correct. Some Japanese immigrants moved here. They were recruited to work in the first factory in Raymond and in the beet fields. Some of these families their descendants are still in and around Lethbridge. During the Second World War, 2,500 of these Japanese Canadians were relocated here by the government to work in the beet fields. It was considered later in life, it was considered a human rights violation to uproot these families and move them here with no choice in the matter. The Canadian government did issue an official apology to the families in 1988, but those families did settle here, and some of them remain here to this day, at least parts of them. So the sugar beet industry has always been important to Lethbridge and agriculture, some for good reason, some for bad, obviously. I mean, history, we like to think of history as this happy, nostalgic style thing, but some of Canadian history is not pleasant and it's not nice. And we have to acknowledge that before we can move out of that cycle. They say history, those who don't study history are doomed to repeat it. So by studying history and the real, honest, nitty-gritty facts about it, perhaps we can avoid those sorts of things as we grow and develop as a society.
Yeah, the more you learn about it, the more you can avoid it. And yeah, exactly. It's fascinating though, Lorian. And moving on from there, Lethbridge, an area also known for its history of irrigation canals. Much of that was put in place by our Mormon community. So that of course, has really influenced the culture of southern Alberta, hasn't it?
It has. Lethbridge and southern Alberta, heavily Mormon. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. They've brought a lot and contributed a lot. The agreement was made by Alexander Galt with the LDS Church so that their settlers would build canals and then they received land and money as payment for their work. They were brought in because they came from Utah originally, where they were experts in dryland farming and the different skills required. And it was able to transform the area around Lethbridge to make more crops possible because we needed high dollar value crops to be able to be grown here. So that it was sort of they got to move to somewhere new and get land and money for it. We got the benefit of their dryland farming knowledge and irrigation.
I am learning so much here. It's fascinating.
Lethbridge is so rich in history and how all of these things that we see now still. We drive over irrigation canals and we see the sugar beet factories, and we go down to the park and we see the mine sites of 6 and 8, Galt Mine 6 and 8, that are still, the ruins are still there. And Lethbridge exists because these things were brought in and this area of the world was made hospitable.
Yeah. It's amazing. It's awesome. Thanks so much again for being with us today. It looks like we're out of time, but we really appreciate having you on here, Lorian.
Well, thank you so much. I would just like to mention that we do have several members-only tours coming up in April, June, and October. So if you'd like to get involved with the bars and taverns or the murder mysteries of Lethbridge's past, please go on our website, get a membership, and then those tours will be open for our members. And we welcome members of the public to our general meetings, again, the fourth Tuesday of every month, usually at the community room in the public library.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Lorian. Very, very interesting. Great to have you on today.
Thank you again for the invitation.
Absolutely. Lorian Johansson is the Vice President of the Lethbridge Historical Society. I'm Jeanette Roche on behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News. Thanks so much for watching.